I'm trying things a little differently. Because in the past I'd like watch a show when it came out at midnight, then I'd stay up writing a quick review of it, putting it together in a video, rendering it, and dropping it at like 3 or 4 in the morning. And I kind of burned out on that. So instead, what I'm going to do is like a weekly thing where I talk about the stuff that I've seen that week. So we're going to start with Picard Season 3. Picard Season 3 is like, that was the big, massive hype one. Like, when Picard was first announced, Patrick Stewart only agreed to do it because he did not want it to just be a Next Generation reunion. He didn't want everyone else to come back. He wanted it to be like a separate story. He wanted to be outside of Starfleet, all of that. And I don't think that worked out very well. And I don't think the showrunners thought it worked out very well either, because by Season 3, basically every original character from Picard has been written out other than Rafi. She's the only original character from the show that made it through to Season 3. Which kind of sucks for everyone else, because I don't think it had bad actors. I just think it had bad writing for them. You get cast in a new Star Trek thing, and then you find out that people don't know what to do with you, and they're writing you out halfway through Season 2 to get ready for the actual show that everyone wants to watch in Season 3. So, that out of the way, let's talk Season 3. Season 3 is amazing. Season 3 is clearly written by somebody who gets the characters, who gets Star Trek. It is a little bit like heavy on the nostalgia bait, but like in a different way. Because like Season 1 of Picard had a lot of characters introduced that were like previously established characters in canon. They had like Bruce Maddox, who was the guy who wanted to declare Data not a person. There was Icheb, who was the Borg kid on Voyager. There was Hugh, who was a former Borg. Those all show up in Season 1 of Picard, basically just to be unceremoniously killed off. There was no real respect for their character given. And in Season 3, you get a little bit of that, like Commander Shelby from The Best of Both Worlds, she shows up, and she dies pretty much immediately after we see her. But like she was just kind of brought in as like a little tease, like, oh yeah, that's Shelby, I remember what she was up to. But one of the characters that they bring back that they still kill off, but I feel like they did a good service to her character, is Ro Laren. She was the first Bajoran character in Star Trek before Deep Space Nine came out. They actually kind of wanted her to be on Deep Space Nine, but Michelle Forbes didn't want to commit to a series at that point. She shows up in this. And when I first see her, I'm worried, okay, here we go. Here's another one where they're just not going to respect her. Because, like, the last time we saw her, she had defected from Starfleet, and here she is back in a Starfleet uniform, right? But they explain it. They actually respect, and, like, she talks about, the long process that she went through to regain herself, like, in the eyes of Starfleet. And Picard, like, hates her. Because the last time he saw her, he sent her out on a mission, and she just betrayed him. They have to contend with that, and they like reach synthesis, and I feel like bringing her in, they did something good with it. And also, I think when they kill her off in this season, they did it in a way where like there's still a possibility that she goes off on a shuttlecraft and then the shuttlecraft explodes. But this is a franchise with teleporters, so they even said that they had like written a thing where she was going to get teleported off the shuttle before it explodes, but they either didn't have time to film it or didn't have the budget to film it. So as far as Star Trek is concerned, she's dead for now, but she could totally come back at any point. So let's actually go back to Rafi here, though. I have a problem with the way that the show has treated Rafi. She's the only one that they kept all 3 seasons, so I like that, but she really doesn't have anything to do. And she's at the end of Season 1, they like tease a romance between her and Seven of Nine, but then by the start of Season 2, they've broken up. And then they spend that season kind of slowly building that back up, like their teams together for most of it. And by the end, they're back together. And then at the start of this season, they're broken up again. And so it's like, you get to have gay characters in Star Trek off screen. If you are actually looking for any kind of real development in the relationship. I think the only other place that you can go to get that, I don't know about the books. I don't read the books or anything like that, and those, as far as I'm concerned, aren't canon anyway. I don't think the books have ever been considered canon. But there is an audio drama called No Man's Land with the actors for 7 of 9 and Rafi, and I haven't listened to the whole thing. I listened to like the start of it, because audio dramas aren't my thing, but I do need to go back and listen to it, because like if you get the actual actors to do it, I think that's probably canon at that point. But it's kind of disappointing that it all happens off screen. When Rafi shows up in this season, it's like she has stuff to do for the first couple episodes, like she's investigating the growing changeling plot. But then as soon as her handler Worf shows up, it's like they forget that she's in the show. She'll like just kind of appear in like a hallway to fight some dudes whenever they need her to do an action scene, but then like it's like you see her and you go, oh, I actually forgot she was in this show. That's right, she's still around. And I don't think that was fair to her. There's still potential for a Seven Rafi relationship in the future, and we'll talk about that once I kind of wrap up my thoughts on this season. One thing I really like about the show is that it was a big thing that was billed as, we're bringing back the original cast, all of them, they're all coming back, except for Will Wheaton, who did show up at the end of season 2 of Picard, but that's it. He doesn't get to reunite with the rest of them, and Denise Crosby doesn't get to come back either, because, well, Tasha's dead, but it's Star Trek, you could have brought her back. There was one moment where we see the hologram of her that Data has, but that's all the acknowledgement we get. They don't even say her name. I don't know. I would have liked to see them work in everyone. I don't know. Even like Pulaski, Dana Muldaur, I'm pretty sure she's still alive. I don't know. Maybe they could have just had her in for like, one shot at the end or something. Those people aside, they bring back everyone. And instead of bringing back everyone like all at the start, they start out, Picard and Riker are like, they're the main characters for this one. They're in every episode, and they're tagging along. They're old bros, they're old buddies, and that's great. But for the other characters, they don't just show up right away. They show up when it's logical for them to show up, so that it doesn't feel a little overstuffed. It feels like it's got a nice build to it. And the way that like Deanna shows up, she doesn't show up until like episode 7 or 8, except that there was like a couple bits where like Riker's talking to her on like a communicator earlier in the season, and my first thought was that like they couldn't actually get Marina Sirtis like on set, like there was a scheduling issue, and so all she could do was these voice calls. And I'm glad that that's not the case. They were just saving her for a moment when they could bring her in and have her actually do her counselor thing and have it, work for the show. And then like Geordi, he shows up, once they're on the run from Starfleet and they need some help. And Geordi's got his daughters, and he's got 2 daughters. One is the pilot on the Titan, and then the other one works with him at like this Starfleet museum of old ships. And the ships are all just the ships that have been in every Star Trek show. That other daughter, that's played by LeVar Burton's actual daughter, Mika Burton. And I don't think she's as strong an actor, and I feel like that's kind of why she's not the one who's the pilot. They just kind of keep her around. She's like also there, but I couldn't even tell you what her name was. She didn't really have any memorable lines. She didn't even really connect with her sister that much. It was more just a cameo of, we've got LeVar Burton's daughter, she wants to be in it, it's cute, have a father-daughter bonding time, and there's a little bit of that, but I would have liked to see them work a bit more with that. But I get the feeling they didn't, probably because she's not the strongest actor. That's my read on it. And when that happens, you don't want the project to suffer too much just for nepotism's sake. So that's not a minor gripe. As far as Data goes, Data has died twice in Star Trek now, because he died in Nemesis, and then they brought him back in season 1 of Picard as like a scientist had like kind of reconstructed his consciousness from B4's memory, B4, his brother that he had downloaded his consciousness onto before he died. Data's kind of just living in a little, computer at the time. He doesn't have a body. And he asks Picard to let him die. And so, but like when that happened, I was just like, but we've already been through this. We've already had Data die and mourn him. And so to bring him back just to have him die and mourn him again felt like overkill. Like, okay, we're hitting all the notes we've already had here. And so going into it, I didn't want it to be Data. I wanted not LeVar Burton. I wanted Brent Spiner to play either Lore or B4 or Alden Singer. He's played a different character in every season of Picard anyway, so there's precedent for it. But what they do is apparently Data has been rebuilt, and he's not the same Data because he's in a newer android body like Picard has, so he's flesh and blood still, or he's flesh and blood now, and he has access to emotions, and so he basically gets to be the real boy that Riker teased him about in Encounter at Farpoint. And that is a nice touchstone to his character. Like, the last time we see him in the show, he is talking to Deanna in a counseling session, talking about his feelings and everything. And it's cute. He gets there. And another good thing that we get because they bring Data back for this is that Geordi gets his moment of grief. This was one of the biggest problems with Star Trek Nemesis, is that Geordi didn't get to grieve. Data dies, and because the director didn't care about Star Trek, he didn't even think to shoot something where even Geordi even looks sad, like in a one shot. Like, it's just him standing on the bridge with everyone else looking sad. He didn't really even get any lines to eulogize his best friend. And that was really unfortunate. And LeVar Burton gives such a good and heartbreaking speech in the show when he gets to see Data and talks about how losing Data broke him. I think that scene alone, giving LeVar that, giving Geordi that, I think that justifies bringing Data back, even though he had died twice, and I was like, don't bring him back again. After that, I was like, I can accept it. Let's talk about the villain, who, oh my god, why am I blanking on her name? She is a changeling. She's played by Amanda Plummer, who is the daughter of Christopher Plummer. And she played Vatic. That's right, that was her name. She's fun. She's not an overly complicated character. She's just a changeling who, some of the funnest villains can just be, your big hammy characters who just sit in a smoky room and deliver menacing dialogue and have, fun little villainous quirks and have a scarred face. That's all great. I mean, that's basically what her father played in Star Trek VI. Christopher Plummer played the Klingon villain in Star Trek VI, and really his only character attribute is that he's really into Shakespeare. Like, during the big end battle with him versus the Enterprise, he's just open comms quoting Shakespeare as he's firing on the Enterprise, to the point where McCoy even complains about it. I don't know anybody who doesn't like Christopher Plummer's character in Star Trek VI, even though he's kind of a nothing character. There's nothing really to him, and I kind of feel like Vatic's the same way. There's a little bit, we get some of her backstory where we find out she was actually held captive by Section 31 scientists who were doing experiments on her, and it's possible that they used her to build the bio weapon that they used against the changelings in the Dominion War. So she's got her tragic backstory and the hinting that, oh yeah, the Federation can be bad sometimes too, which Deep Space Nine I think probably did a better job there. That just gives her a little bit more justification of, yeah, I can understand why she would want revenge on the Federation. They did try to genocide her species. That is bad. That was bad of them. But a complex villain, she is not. No. She's fun. She's hammy. She's great. I like her. One of the big standouts, though, of the show has to be Jack Crusher. Now, there are, in fact, two people named Jack Crusher. But Memory Alpha, good enough. I searched Jack Crusher and it just gives me the one I'm looking for here. So the original Jack Crusher was Picard's best friend in the Academy, and then he got married to Beverly Crusher, had Wesley, and died in Picard's command. But now here we are, 20 years after Nemesis. Beverly Crusher's been off. She hasn't talked to anybody in a long time, and it's because it turns out she and Picard have a kid, and she wanted to protect that kid from all of the universe-saving hijinks that Picard gets into. So here we have Jack Crusher, a young man who's kind of conflicted in terms of his feelings for Picard. We find out actually that a couple years before this, he had actually sought out Picard, like at a bar where Picard's just telling glory stories to young cadets who see a legend and ask him, and he asks him, like, did you ever want a son or anything like that? Do you ever want a family? And Picard's like, oh, young man, Starfleet's the only family I'll ever need, which obviously he didn't know he's talking to his son at the time. I'm sure his tune would have changed there, but like, you seek out your father who's never known you and you've never known them, and that's the first thing you hear. It's gonna be disappointing. But I really like Jack, and he and Picard grow more fond of each other over the course of the series. I like the actor. He's inexplicably British just because Picard has a British accent, so his son has to have a British accent, even though Picard's French. And Jack was raised by Beverly, who does not have a British accent. She has a mid-Atlantic accent, but they just like have a line that's like, oh yeah, no, he went off to boarding school in London, which I think is actually the same excuse that they gave for why Deanna Troi has her accent in Star Trek. This is an aside, but it's a funny one. When Deanna Troi was first created as a character, Marina Sirtis was doing her accent that she thought was like the alien Betazoid accent. But then when her mom shows up, she's played by Majel Barrett, who just has a very brash American accent. And she's like, well, I don't understand. I thought I had an alien accent, but here's my mom who's the alien and she has an American accent. So where'd my accent come from? And then like Rick Berman's like, oh, it's your dad's accent. But then there was an episode much later in TNG where she has flashbacks to being a kid, and we see her dad, and her dad also just has an American accent. So then she goes up to Rick Berman, and she's like, what the hell? Where's my accent from, Rick? And he's like, they sent you off to boarding school. So they used the same excuse they gave for Marina Sirtis' Deanna Troi accent, gave it to Jack Crusher here. Like I said, I think that they're going to be doing a spin-off of Star Trek Picard called Star Trek Legacy, where they take a lot of these characters that they've introduced in the show, like 7 of 9 is now captain of the Enterprise G, which they renamed the Titan at the end, and Rafi's her first officer, and he's now joined, the Crusher's now joined Starfleet, and he's like, a special advisor, and Geordi's daughter is piloting the ship. Terry Matalas, who's the showrunner for season 3, he has called it Star Trek Legacy. It's a pitch that he's got. Now, it's not greenlit, and I don't think it's going to be greenlit yet because we're still in the writer's strike. But basically, everyone at Secret Hideout wants this show to happen. Reception for Star Trek Picard season 3 was basically universally positive. And so I think it's a foregone conclusion that we're getting a spin-off with 7 as captain and all of these characters introduced here showing up. It's just a matter of writer strike has to be over. They have to, find the budget for it, because I know Paramount took a big loss on the streaming site, and so they're kind of like having to pare down how many things they've got in production at one time. They've already got Discovery's ending after season 5, which I think they've finished filming that, but I don't know when it's coming out. But they've also got 2 animated series that they're making, Lower Decks and Prodigy. And then there's a spin-off of Discovery called Starfleet Academy that's coming out. And then they've got the Section 31 movie with Michelle Yeoh. So they've got a lot on their plate already. So we may not see Star Trek Legacy for a couple years, but I would bet any amount of money it will happen. It will be made. That brings me to the real breakout character of Picard season 3, Captain Shaw. This guy, captain of the Titan, he is absolutely the best character of this season. And they kill him off in the last episode. He's this abrasive asshole. When he first shows up, he's like refusing to call 7 of 9. He insists she use her birth name of Annika Hansen, even though she hasn't gone by that since she was 6. He's, rude to Picard and Riker when they show up on his ship, insults Riker's music taste, insults Picard's wine. Actually, that's a running gag in this season. is that everyone is making fun of Picard's wine. They're like, oh, I don't really like it that much, or it's not really my thing. I'm more of a Merlot guy myself. And it's kind of funny because before that, Chateau Picard has always just been seen as, oh, well, you know, Picard has a vineyard and comes from a very established family, so it must be good. But the idea that Picard would retire from Starfleet and just go off to make wine that isn't very good is really funny. But Shaw is one of those characters. He starts off, he's an asshole, you hate him. Like, after the first episode, I was just like, I want this guy off the show as soon as possible. He's racist to Seven. He's just a total jerk. But then you find out, well, like, Riker and Picard were going onto his ship to, like, secretly commandeer it to go rescue Beverly, like, without Starfleet knowing. So, like, they went onto his ship with false pretenses to rope him into some big galaxy-spanning adventure with danger, and everyone's gonna, you know, be shot at, and everyone's gonna be called a traitor. And, like, he's just a guy. Like, he has a line. He's like, I'm just a dipshit from Chicago. And, you know, he just wants to do his job. He doesn't want to be the big hero. He's just like, look, I've got a ship in the fleet. I'm just doing my job. Can we just, like, not rock the boat and try to do any kind of big heroics? Can I just be the guy? And we also find out that, like, his hatred of Borg makes a lot of sense because he's a survivor of Wolf 359. So that would be a really good reason for him not only to hate Borg in general, but to hate Picard in particular, because Picard killed his entire ship. Now, obviously, Picard wasn't in control of himself. He was, you know, assimilated, but still. And Shaw has, like, survivor's guilt from that. You know, he's like, it was him and a bunch of others standing around. There's, like, one escape pod left and only 10 of them, and they can't all fit in it. And they're standing around like, well, who goes? And, like, an officer just comes up and points at him and goes, you go. And he's like, why pick me? I'm just a dipshit from Chicago. Like, you know, she didn't even go. She sent me to live while she died. And that's, you know, that's what the Borg are to him. Some lingering resentment of Picard is understandable. Absolutely, Paco. He grows on you so much. He's this smart ass. He's always has some snide comments to say. It's always great. But then they kill him off at the end after everyone had loved him. And, like, Todd Stashwick has been on Twitter. You know, every episode that came out was always, you know, talking with fans. He just seems like he's a great guy. Todd Stashwick's the actor for him. And I have to believe with the fan reaction to him that they'll bring him back in some capacity. You know, it's sci-fi. You can bring people back from the dead. They've done it before. He could just be like a hologram on the ship. Obviously, he can't be captain of the Enterprise G, which is the Titan, just renamed because, you know, that was kind of the big reveals. They wanted to tell the story of the next Enterprise, but not tell you it's the Enterprise until the end. And so he can't be captain of the Enterprise, but have him be a hologram, you know? Have him still stick around. He's great. There's ways to do it. Everyone wants it. Oh yeah, we get the Enterprise D, even though that blew up in Star Trek Generations. The star drive section blew up, but the saucer had survived because it crashed on the planet. So the big reveal at the end of the season is when there's this big Borg plot that's taken over the entire fleet because they're all like, they have this new Bluetooth Wi-Fi system to interoperate, which the Borg are able to hijack and control the entire fleet as one unit. They have to go and find an older ship that's not been retrofitted with this that they can use. And, well, Geordi has been restoring the Enterprise for the last 20 years because they recovered the saucer and he just took the star drive section from another Galaxy-class ship, put it all together. And this is kind of one thing that I noticed is that there were pretty limited sets on the show for most of it. Like, most of the sets are just kind of like, you know, the Titan Bridge and a meeting room and a hallway. And I think a big part of it was just they were saving their set budget to build a perfect replica of the Enterprise D bridge. And it's gorgeous. It looks so good. And people who are friends with me will have probably heard me talk about at some point, like, my big dream, if I ever win the lottery, is I want to build a home theater that is a 1-to-1 replica of the Enterprise D bridge. And so if I win the lottery, I know exactly who I'm calling to get that done, because I forget her name, but I'm following her on Twitter. She was the person that they tasked with rebuilding the set and getting everything involved and doing all the research and making sure, you know, finding the right carpet and getting all of the chairs just right. Like, they did such a good job with it. I love it. One more thing that I've got that's kind of an issue with it is one of the big reveal is that Jack Crusher has actually like Borg DNA. Like, they had implanted something in Picard that he passed on to his son that creates like a Borg transceiver. So like Jack is able to actually like broadcast commands to the collective. So the Borg actually use him to enact a big change where like the Borg and the Changelings have been working together. The Changelings have infiltrated Starfleet, and they've modified the transporter buffer patterns to add on new DNA to basically everyone in the fleet that make them receivers of those Borg transmissions. So it's basically all wetware. It's all an organic Borg assimilation, and they can use Jack to control the entire fleet. But because you can't just like change someone's DNA and it automatically builds new structures, that's not how it works. That would be like you have built a house and then you change the blueprints. That doesn't automatically change the house. It only affects people who are like 25 and younger because they're still developing, they're still growing. And kind of the unfortunate implication of that is that some people pointed out is that it sounds like it's a social contagion that only affects the young, right? As we're dealing with a lot of anti-trans rhetoric. And I don't think that the authors intended that. I think it was just an unfortunate parallel that some people drew with it. I think I've probably just about covered everything I have to say about Picard Season 3. I think it's great. Really look forward to Star Trek Legacy. It's probably going to be several years before we see it, but it's going to happen. Yeah, so with that, let's move on. Hey, thanks for watching. I'm trying to get my channel monetized, so your view means a lot. Don't forget to toss me a like and subscribe and ring the bell. I stream these reviews every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific, so catch me live and join in on the convo. You can find all my socials in the description below, and a special shout out to my patron pfftlecakes. Your support means the world. Catch you next time.